Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Confessions of an Autism Mom. I am Amanda, and thank you all for joining in this week. And whatever platform you all are listening to this episode on, make sure you subscribe or follow. So let's go ahead and hop into this week's episode. I have a mom and a BCBA. She's both. Tawana here with us today. Hi, Tawana. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thank you for joining us this week, sharing your stories so that many moms can hear.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so let's go ahead and hop on in today's episode. Can you start off by just giving us a brief overview of your journey, just basically the signs that you saw and what made you get your son tested?
Yeah, so my son's 12 now. When he was a baby, he was super advanced. So he was hitting a lot of milestones. He was babbling, sitting up, crawling, hitting his milestones like really quickly. And of course, I was like, oh, my son's a genius. I was really excited. But at some point, it just stopped. And the progression not only stopped, but he started to regress as well. And then I started noticing a lot of sensory seeking. He would spin around a lot and made a lot of my family nervous because they were like, he's going to hurt himself. I'm like, no, he does this all the time. He would rub his hand across surfaces and like keep his face really close so he can like, I don't know what he was looking at, but a lot of stuff like that. Around a year and a half, I started bugging the pediatrician. I was like, something's not right. He was babbling. He was, saying simple words. Now he's not talking at all. He's just not like other kids his age. And unfortunately, I was told what a lot of moms are told, that kids just progress differently and not to worry about it. So it was really difficult to get that diagnosis.
What was the resistance from the pediatrician besides that each kid developed, at their own pace?
Well, after bugging a lot, I was referred to a specialist, and I saw that specialist. I was like, finally, we're going to get some answers. And she told me he was just spoiled. She was like, that's why he's not talking. It took me about 3.5, 4 years to even get to that specialist. My son was 5 at that time, not talking, kind of in his own little world. It was hard to get him to pay attention when you were talking as well. And it just kind of showed me that no matter how hard you kind of advocate, if it's the wrong people, you're just not getting that support. So when she told me that, I kind of flipped out and I was like, I'm going to figure something else out because they're not going to help.
And when she said that he was spoiled, I just have to know, didn't she know he was speaking prior to the regression?
Yeah, it's all in his charts. I even had to prove it to his doctor because he was saying mama very early. And the doctor was like, no, he's probably just babbling. And I'm really bad with shots. So dad stayed in the room and I walked out. And when I came back, the doctor was like, he was calling for you. I'm like, I told you. And he's like, no, he was really calling for you. So they had it all documented. And now I know that that's a sign, but I didn't at that time. And I think a lot of pediatricians, it's getting better, but especially, 10 years ago, just didn't have the awareness that was needed.
So, quick story, Aiden was advanced like that as a baby. Like, he was like very young, saying mom, dad. He would call my mom's first name. Her first name is Lisa. He was calling his cousin's name, like, to get our attention. He would tell us to turn the lights on, turn the lights off, bed. Like, he was saying like these phrases, and we were like, whoa. And he was opening bottle tops, and it just stopped.
Did it regress?
And he regressed
Yeah.
bad. And the doctor told me, and she was like, no, he wasn't doing all of that. I had to pull out a video to show her.
Yep.
All the things that my baby was doing. And I was like, why would I have to lie, about what my baby.
Yeah.
So that offended me. That was like my strike 1 through 3 with her.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I remember him being in his little door swing and he couldn't even fully support himself yet. but we would do this back and forth, like lip popping, like sound. And I would do it and I'd say, your turn. And then he would do it and then look at me for my turn. And it's like that receptive language was there. We were having that back and forth communication as well. And then now, like, he doesn't understand anything I'm saying. Like, it was a drastic regression.
Yeah. So we can relate when it comes to that. Like and I'll be honest, if that hadn't changed or he would have still spoke, I would have never gotten him tested, to be honest.
Yeah.
How did you feel after you received the diagnosis after going through all of that?
So I knew something was wrong for a while. It took me sending him to school and kind of putting him on somebody else to get the diagnosis. I was like, I'm sending him to school. They're going to realize, and then something's going to happen. And his dad was very adamant. He's like, no, just give me like another year. Because currently where I'm at, kindergarten isn't a requirement. So, but I was like, no, we're going to get answers as soon as he's somebody else's burden, is how I felt about it, unfortunately. And that's what it was. Within a week, the teacher was like, I can't handle this. Something's wrong. They brought in the school psychologist, and that's when they told me he had autism. I got a second diagnosis through my local regional center. Mm-hmm. And even when you know something is wrong, you still go through denial. You go through the stages of grief, bargaining, like, well, maybe it's this. You go through all those stages and you start grieving the life that you imagined, like when they were in your stomach, and you start wondering, will he ever find love? Will he ever live on his own? Like, you start going through all of those, and that's very natural. It's very okay. But I felt really guilty having those thoughts. Yeah. It was very difficult for me to wrap my head around for a couple of months, but then I started viewing it as, hey, we have a name to it, which means I can learn what this is and I can support him to where he has good quality of life.
That's amazing. Did this lead you back to school for BCBA?
It led me back to school for behavioral health sciences with the emphasis on childhood and adolescent disorders. And I started working part-time in the ABA field because at this time I was a prison guard. I was actually about to go into my local sheriff's department. I was doing all law enforcement. So I was like, let me do a part-time. I'm going to get this degree just to understand, because my oldest has ADHD as well. My youngest actually was diagnosed with ADHD last year, so he has both. So I was like, this will be perfect to help me understand both of them. My initial goal wasn't BCBA, but I fell in love with the field. I loved the flexibility that I had too, because a lot of experience in ABA, especially years prior, it's very rigid and it doesn't have to be. And I saw the support that I was able to give parents and children, and I just fell in love with it. So I was like, one degree down, let's get the other and get my hours, get this license going.
And kudos to you for taking that step and actually falling in love with it and doing it for your child. A lot of times people get in that field and they're not passionate about it, but you're passionate and you're doing it for your child. So that means that you are really into what you're doing, and parents, I'm pretty sure they appreciate you 100% because both sides, parents' role and the BCBA role. When he was 5, how did you all go about with treatment? Did you start ABA or speech occupational? What did y'all do?
So he was diagnosed at 6.
Okay.
But he was in kindergarten. And I found out about a local children's center. And they had a 10-week program where it had ABA, it had PCIT, OT, speech. It was very structured. And I got him on the waiting list. So about a year later, they were like, hey, he's a little older than some of the kids here, but we feel he'll be a great fit. And he entered that program with a vocabulary under 15 words, which is considered nonverbal. And he left it with, it was like high 70s. the words that he was able to express. And not just that, he was happier because like he was able to regulate. We found out for him, the biggest component was OT. A lot of his sensory was blocking his ability to focus and regulate. So that's why he wasn't able to kind of take in what was going on around him. So that was a game changer. I remember the hardest moment, and literally after this moment, I was enrolled in college and starting ABA like a month later, was we were in the kitchen, and because he was nonverbal, we would play, I called it the pointing game. He would point and I would like grab it and say this, and he would either shake his head yes or no. And we were doing that for like 4 minutes, and I just couldn't figure out what he was asking for. And he just kind of dropped his head and just walked away. And I felt useless, you know, like as a mother, I don't know what my child wants. So I just like sat against the cabinets crying, and I was like, what am I going to do? A month later, I was enrolled in college and I started ABA, and we've just been pushing ever since.
It's a good comeback because I feel like that often. Like I'm like, why don't I understand my child, or why am I not doing enough to get it? So I truly understand that. And you did what was right. That's amazing of you as a mom to do that. Do you separate the two, like the mom in the BCBA?
That's difficult. As a BCBA, I'm way more effective when it's not my child because I'm a mom. And that's why I said there's flexibility, because sometimes we give in, we mess up. You know, that's my kid and he looks just like me. So he has me wrapped around his finger. You know, I do utilize a lot of ABA strategies, but not as effective as with other kiddos. So, yeah.
And you mentioned ADHD and your son. How do you balance the two?
It makes sense because a lot of ASD and ADHD symptoms kind of overlap.
Okay.
My oldest has combined presentation. So he has the AD, H, and D. Like he's everywhere. My youngest, not so much. So it could be mistaken as just sensory seeking. A lot of his fidgeting, and he jumps a lot, stuff like that. His stims are a lot less frequent now because he's learned how to regulate physically. So it's really hard with him to be like, is this the autism or is this the ADHD? And honestly, he's happy. So I don't really try to pinpoint too much. It's just whatever he needs in that moment, I try to make sure he gets. I try to make sure to teach him how to get it himself as well and just support him. Puberty, not a great mix. I've yet to see it be a great mix. So he's also taking some medicine for his emotion regulation, which has been super helpful. I was very against medication. So it was kind of hard to figure out with the psychiatrist, like kind of like, I don't want it to change his personality. I don't want it to change, you know, his energy levels. None of that has been affected. He's just not angry nearly as much. So that's been super helpful.
Okay. And you mentioned sensory diet. What is that? If you can explain that.
Yes. So I actually have a sensory checklist that I like to give to a lot of parents, teachers, kind of whoever I come across. And it'll have like, does the child seek this? Do they avoid this? And that kind of lets us know what sensory activities or items to have in the general area. Because you'll notice a lot of kids, not just with autism, but it's very common in autism to have that heightened sensory need. And like I said, for him, that was the turning point. That's when he was able to start taking in information and putting out information, was when I started incorporating a lot of that heavy work for him. That's what it was. He needs a lot of pressure. I would literally like put one of my couch cushions on him and lay on him like my full body weight. And he loved it. Of course, couch cushion for safety, but stuff
Safety,
like
yeah.
that. We would pretend to push the wall. A lot of things like that would help him regulate, and you would see the difference. He'd go from kind of being in his own world, which isn't an issue. Um,
Yeah.
it's just kind of difficult to teach. So he went from like that to being on me, like he's attentive to me or he's attentive to that toy.
Okay.
And the difference was very drastic.
Okay, because that's the issue we're having at this moment. My baby can't learn or intake. He's intaking it, but it's not easy to intake because he cannot regulate properly. And they're trying everything, to get him to regulate. Like now we're completely thrown off. Like old behaviors have returned and it's like, do I stop OT? Do I keep going? It's just really confusing right now, but that's our biggest issue is finding ways to regulate him. I'm gonna try the cushion couch though. The cushion. I'm gonna try that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I can send you that checklist, absolutely. And that way you can
Thank
kind of get an
you.
idea of what he's seeking.
Okay. Looking at your child today, what milestone or moments fill you up and makes you extremely happy?
When we first started, it was definitely your general milestones. Um, but like I said, I started noticing that they're happier. Like my kids are loud, they have no filter, they're silly, they're goofy. They're all these things where it's like, I must be doing a good job because they're comfortable and they're happy. So that's kind of the milestones I look at now is can they still communicate with me? How do they handle life situations? Like if somebody's mean to them or, you know, cleaning up a mess or, something different that maybe they haven't experienced before. How do they navigate it? Because my goal was independence. My biggest fear was you can't need me when I'm not able to be here your whole life. Like that was my biggest fear. So that's the milestones I look at is getting towards that independence to where you'll have me, but you won't need me.
I like that because I think a lot of people for me is I know Aiden knows his like ABCs and numbers. He just won't tell me. But I also don't really focus on that part as much because I'm like, I know you understand and that you can take it in. I want him to understand life stuff, just everyday skills means the most to me because I'm like, if something happens to me, I want him to have those things. And that's very important to me. And I think people look at autism and they see the kids doing different things and they're like, oh, I want my child to be able to, spell his name at 3 or 4 or just the little, the activities that you see the kids do on social media. But for me, that I'm more of life skills.
Yeah.
So, so I agree with you as well. What does progress look like to you in your household?
My kids have their own kind of personal goals. For my youngest with autism, he loved independence. So I remember introducing a task analysis where I literally took pictures of him during the shower process. And I'm very repetitive. I have like structure. So when I take a shower, it looks like this every single time. And that's just how I was with him, which is good. Now I know. So I would snap pictures and then I made a list of it with the pictures on there and I would have him go through it. I'd be like, okay, now we do this, now we do that. And I did that once. And then after that, he was like, get out of the bathroom. Like whenever I would try to help him with the shower, he would like cover himself and he'd like point to the door. And I'm like, okay, like you got it. And then I was like, let's do brushing teeth next and washing hands and getting dressed. And that independence was like really important to him. So that still carries over into his age now. A lot of the progression is towards his independence.
I want to go back to when you brought up puberty. I can never say this. puberty. Can we
Yeah.
talk about that? Because I heard a lot of moms talking about that, and the speech therapist kind of threw that out to me. She was like, "Oh, we have Aiden calm right now, but when that time comes, it's gonna go woo." Can you? How are the emotions with that?
Oh, so my baby was so sweet. He was super sweet. Um, Wanted to sleep in my bed till he was like 10, kind of thing. Super clingy, very lovey-dovey. And then out of the blue, just didn't want to be by me. He started yelling. He started property destruction, which never happened in the home before. He's
Mhm.
broken a couple of electronics and other things, slamming doors. And I was like, what's going on? And then I was like, you know what? And I went and looked at his armpits and his legs. And I was like, puberty's hit. Like he started growing hair. I was like, this is what it is. So I really focused on that emotion regulation, which is a common area that's difficult for kiddos, neurotypical kiddos too, but especially neurodiverse ones. And I tried to really focus on these are our coping skills. And we feel like this, what can we do? I use a lot of visuals. It was helping a little bit at home, not so much at school. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to reach out to a psychiatrist because it's getting to the point to where the school's trying to like put them in holds and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that, you know? So I really tried to avoid it, but it's been effective. And now we're able to kind of focus on that emotion regulation and those coping skills. What can we do right now? I've noticed even with me, like I might get a little overwhelmed and he knows when I'm upset. He'll be like, your lips are getting little or something like that. He knows when I'm upset. And so he'll like reason with me. And I'm like, you're right. I need to calm down. So it's been very helpful to kind of teach those things. Ideally, he won't need medication forever because it's just kind of giving us that time to develop those skills. So yeah, puberty was really rough with him. Same thing with my oldest as well. They were both super sweet, and then just kind of overnight, like
Sweet.
terrible twos all over again, just way bigger and stronger.
And let's talk about you being a BCBA because, as you know, ABA therapy is a controversial topic on social media. From your studies and from you graduating, do you understand where the other people that are against ABA therapy are coming from?
Absolutely. Like a lot of therapies, ABA's past is not great. Um, Very rigid, very cookie cutter, very what's comfortable for society. You know, a lot of we're fixing all of this, like a checklist. And it impacted, well, yeah, there's the half that's like, well, the people who are complaining can complain. So it worked, but they're complaining for a reason. Just because it worked doesn't mean it was beneficial.
Okay.
And so I found out about the history after I was working in ABA and I was kind of surprised. So I did research because I'm like, hey, I don't want to be a part of something that's damaging. And that's when I saw that it was the rigidity that was the issue. And don't get me wrong, you'll still come across a lot of, especially older generations that still kind of follow those more rigid kind of structures. But all my education was on trauma informed care, diversity, cultural, like it was all this stuff to be like, hey, take into account the values of your clients. And not only that, there's times where I have to advocate for my client against like their parent, where I'm like, hey, I understand why you want this, but this is why it's not too good of an idea, you know? Um, ABA is a lot more flexible. And I feel like finding the right fit is one of the biggest things that a lot of people have an issue with.
And what would you say to parents that are looking at the good reviews and bad reviews and they're like trying to decide? What would be your advice to them?
Have those discussions like with who's going to help you. Definitely look up reviews. I've worked for a couple of ABA companies, and every single time that I left a company, it's because our values did not align. So those reviews are super beneficial. But a lot of these companies have multiple BCBAs that have multiple mid-tier supervisors and multiple one-on-ones. So have that discussion with who you're going to be working with. Let them know what you're comfortable with. And that should be what they're doing. That first introduction should be, hey, what is important to you? And what's important to your kid? Because the kid comes first, but then it's the parents. Like, what's important for you? Because buy-in is super important. If you have somebody coming into your home and working with your child, but leaving, we can only do so much. So we need the parents to have that buy-in, to be motivated to continue where we're leaving off. That way the child has their best chance. So having those discussions, finding somebody who is flexible with you and who you feel your values align is super important.
And if you don't mind me asking, I noticed that there is always a big turnover rate when it comes to RBTs. Is there an explanation for that?
Yeah, you have to have a passion. The burnout rate is really high in ABA.
Okay.
And even for me, I was motivated for my kids, but there was certain companies that I would work for where, like I said, the values weren't aligned. We're working with kids where ABA just might not be enough. This isn't appropriate. We're not going to be able to help this kid. Why are we here? And that's one of the things in the BACB ethics is like, if we're not able to help within like a 6-month period, we need to look into something else. And so I ran into a lot of situations like that where I'm like, I feel like I'm just a bodyguard. Like I'm just here to protect the other children, or just here to make money for the company, something like that. And that really unmotivates you. When you get into that line of work, you get in to help children and adults. I've worked with both. And when you're not able to help, you blame yourself. And it's kind of like, well, maybe I'm just not good for this, or maybe this, like, I just can't be what these kids need. And then you also have some people have a really high caseload and
Okay.
you feel the weight on your shoulders if a kiddo's not making progression, or they regress in some way. It's very easy to take it personal.
Okay.
And so I feel like all that plays a role in that turnover rate that we're seeing.
Yeah, because I'm like, one day it's like this great person, and then they're gone the next minute. And I'm like, where? I love that person. And they're like, yeah, they're no longer here. And I'm like, my God, can we get a bye sometimes? But I get it. How do you balance being a BCBA and a mom? And what I mean by that is, like, you work with kids on the spectrum and then you come home to your sons. How do you balance everything?
A lot of self-care. Yeah. It's a good thing because I love it. So that makes it a lot easier. But honestly, it's just finding that middle ground where it's like, okay, I need to kind of focus on me, because like they say in the airplane, you have to put your mask on before you can put on your child's mask. So it's a lot of that self-care to reduce that burnout, because I do go and work with kids, and then I come home and my kids, and it can be very easy to just want to like hide away. But I'm mom, so I can't. So focusing on that self-care, enjoying those little moments,
Yeah.
because like we were talking about progression, it looks different based off of each kid. So for my youngest, it's the independence, but for some kids it could be maybe looking your direction while you're talking to them, or putting on their shoes, or whatever that looks like, and kind of living in those moments. That really helps.
What do you say to mom that feel like they can never get any self care time? Because I personally believe if you give it 5 to 10 minutes in, that's pouring into yourself and only yourself, you can get that in. What advice do you give them?
Advocate for yourself, because I remember telling myself my kids deserve a stable mom. Like that's what they deserve. So even if my car is my location, my kids know if I go to my car, leave me alone. Like I just kind of need 5 minutes, play my music, kind of find those moments. And be proactive with it. Like every day, wake up and be like, I'm going to find 10 minutes today and really look for those because we can find it. We would find it for our kids. So we need to find it for us so that we can be the best we can be for our kids.
And for me, my location was the closet, and I'm gonna do the car because I sit in the car after work for like 30 minutes. But in house, it was the closet, and now Aiden has made the closet his personal space. And then I went to the vanity area in the bathroom, and now the vanity area is his personal space. And I'm like, can I have a moment? And he straight told me no one day. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to start just going to the car for 5 minutes because he literally does not let me have anything that I make my personal space. So thank you for that. So you have built a business rooted in empowering other parents. What gaps did you see in the support system that needed to be filled?
It was very difficult to get the diagnosis, which is unfortunately common for minorities. The last I checked, the average age of diagnosis for a Black male or Black child was 6, and the average age for Caucasian was 2. So it's very difficult. I then also saw that lack of support for parents. Some have said that being an autism parent is equatable to the stress of, I believe it was like PTSD.
PTSD of a coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really difficult. And a lot of times you don't find that support that's specific to the parents or specific to the siblings. Um, Having a child on the spectrum impacts a lot of people, and the focus isn't placed on those people. It's just placed on that kid. And sometimes it's just placed on quote unquote fixing that kid, which isn't beneficial to anybody involved. So I saw a lot of gaps, and I was like, well, this isn't happening in my household. And when I started providing that support in the homes and doing stuff like parent training and all of that, I remember having moments where I'm on the phone crying with these parents because they're telling me their kid just did something that we've been working on, or maybe them telling me like an experience similar to my kitchen experience with my son. And it's very beneficial that I do have those, both of those sides, because it helps. It really does help with supporting parents. And that was one of the biggest gaps that I noticed, was that parents are not getting the support that they need to support their child.
And I want to look backtrack on something that you just said. You mentioned that in the Caucasian kids, they get the diagnosis at the age of 2, and then for us, it's 6. Is it the doctors, or is it a culture thing that we are just waiting and then they get in school and the teachers are telling our community, or is it the doctors ignoring us?
I think it's a mixture. And those numbers I read when I was getting my bachelor's. So I don't know how much different it is now. That was a few years back.
Okay.
But I do believe it's a mixture. And then you also have in some communities that not trusting of certain specialists like therapists and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then we have that lack of awareness, and with a lot of pediatricians, where they're just not really aware of what autism looks like and what to look out for to make that referral. I wish I knew what specialist I was referred to. I'm not sure what she was, but she lacked the awareness as well, because I look back on it and I'm like, I should have known he had autism when he was a year old, you know? But that lack of awareness mixed with maybe certain values and beliefs towards the healthcare system, I feel both play a role in it.
From your point of view as a BCBA, why do you feel like parent training gets overlooked sometimes? Because I notice when I post about parent training, a lot of people in the comments are like, I didn't know about this. And I'm like, you have to know about it. So why is it overlooked so much?
Your typical ABA model will have your BT, so that one person that comes most likely daily. And then typically you have a mid-tier supervisor and then the BCBA that oversees the whole program. And so a lot of emphasis is put on that BT. So your kid has a certain amount of goals based on how many hours they're getting, and a lot of the focus is just on that. Typically what they tell you is do an hour of parent training a month. That's typically what they say, which is ideal if we're getting a lot of that participation from parents during the sessions, but there's no way to fully guarantee that. So a lot of times you see those parents will just do that hour a month of the parent training and not be involved throughout the actual therapy process. So I feel more emphasis is put on the child, and just kind of the hope of parent is paying attention and kind of picking up.
If you could create a blueprint of what parent training should look like, what would it be?
So typically I have that conversation with parents, introduce myself, give them some background from me, try to figure out some background with them and their kids. I try to identify what's most important for them. Like, what are you looking for in ABA? What are your goals? What are some goals you have for your kid? And then assessments, of course, you do your assessments to kind of gauge where kids' level is at. And then you start with your parent training. And initially, the first thing is, what is ABA? This is what it looks like. This is what you can expect. And then it's going into principles of ABA. So maybe, reinforcement, pairing, stuff like that. Just our basic staples for how we teach our kids, and go from there. A lot of it is going to be dependent on parents understanding. Maybe they've been doing ABA before. I meet a lot of parents like that, but they're like, yeah, my other kid was in ABA for like 5-10 years. So we can start a little further down, but it's typically just getting that, like, what is it that you're looking for? How can I help you? And then, okay, let's start with what is ABA and teaching you those ABA skills.
Sounds like a great one because I didn't, never mind. I wish I would have got that part of it, of what I knew what ABA was from me Googling it and doing a lot of research on my own. Um, Aiden, I switched his BCBA out because I didn't feel like she was giving me the information that I needed. I don't think she practices anymore at all though. But I felt it, and when she left, I was like, I get it. But I switched his BCBA early on because she was just not, I don't know, it wasn't connecting with us.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the biggest thing with ABA. I tell people, make sure you connect with your BCBA and the RBT. How important is that? Because just coming from a BCBA and a parent.
It's extremely important because a lot of these times you're letting us into your home. This is your private area and you're trusting us with your child. So it's super important for you to be comfortable. I need my parents to be comfortable with me because I need them to share stuff that might be difficult to share. And I need them to have that confidence that, yeah, I'm not judging you. I'm here to help you and support you in the way that's best for you and your family. So getting along with your team is probably the most important thing with ABA.
And what's one myth or misconception that you would like to disappear when it comes to ABA therapy?
That ABA therapy is a cure. I don't like that. Autism isn't something that needs to be cured. I don't even feel fully that it's something that needs to be treated. And that's where I kind of differ from a lot of BCBAs that you may talk to, because I'm a mom. So I take offense to certain things. Like, there's a lot of things, like, I don't like the term autistic. I'm like, no, my son has autism. he's not autistic. So there's certain things where it's like mom comes out.
Okay.
So I don't like that ABA is termed as a treatment or a cure. It's supposed to be supportive. The goal is to increase and enhance that quality of life. I don't want to quote unquote fix something that society feels needs to be fixed. If it's not harming your child and if your child is happy, then what's the problem with it?
Yeah. And autism and autistic, let's talk about that because this is my first time hearing it. And even though I am hosting a podcast, I am learning every time I speak with someone. And that's what I enjoy the most. What is it that you don't like about autistic?
I feel like when you call somebody autistic, you're viewing them as their disorder before them as a person. Um, I went through a lot of trying to protect my son from judgment from other children and from adults. He's a very social kid, always has been, which you don't always hear about kids on the spectrum, but he'll wave at cars passing by and stuff, and people just like stare at him and like little things like that that I just did not like. And that first teacher, she was an older lady, not very nice. And she was like, I know he's autistic, and just started throwing that around. And I did not like it. And I think that's probably what stuck with me. But even now, it's just, I feel when I say my son has autism, like he does. He has a disorder and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not his core personality. He's also great at drawing. We're not sitting here and calling him an artist, you know? There's a lot of different adjectives and labels I can put on my child, but those are a part of him. They're not him.
Gotcha. And I'm going to be more considerate about that because I don't really, I've said autistic a couple of times, but mostly I am saying autism. My son has autism, things like that. And I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like so many terms get thrown around. And out of all terms, this one is the most important, the way you broke it down, because I get a lot of backlash about autism mom. And I'm like, it's so many other words that you can be concerned about versus
Yeah.
autism mom. And it's autistic, y'all. So let's kind of revert back because that one doesn't get talked about at all. So that's why I asked.
There's a lot of things where there's controversy. It may insult one, it may not insult the other. I don't correct people unless it's my son. That's when I'm like, he has autism, you know. But parents I work with will call their child autistic all the time. It's more of a personal preference. There's also, for example, the puzzle piece. I actually have a tattoo with my son's signature on my arm that has the puzzle piece, and that's offensive to some people.
I have one too.
Oh, and it's watercolor outlined just like mine. Mine was, I had him like draw his signature and they tattooed it. Yeah. I haven't seen anybody else with one like mine. That's awesome. But a lot of people don't like it. And then I have like the Disney text. It says till all the pieces fit. And like some people take offense to it. But I feel like it's more of, I found that piece that kind of clicked for him and kind of enhanced that life. Or his life. I don't view it as offensive, but I haven't been diagnosed with autism. So what's offensive to somebody else, I'm not gonna, argue about. It's just, that's a lot of stuff in the autism community is, there's controversy with a lot of different terms and a lot of different therapies. So kind of finding that balance.
So autism is, like I say, it's all around you at home, at school. What is something about Tawana outside of autism that you value about yourself the most?
I'm very creative, very crafty. I crochet, violin, I sketch. I'm also very introverted. Like I just like being home and doing this stuff, I don't really like going out too much. And when I do, it's like nature wise. But yeah, I'm very crafty. And like I said, my youngest, he's drawing now. There was a point when he lacked the imagination to draw. if you gave him like a crayon, he would write the letter A or a triangle. Triangles were just his favorite shape.
Uh-huh.
And now he's like making flip books, and he's doing animation, and he's doing all this stuff. So I passed that down to him, definitely.
And if you can go back and tell your younger self anything at the beginning of this process, like when you started your journey, what would you tell yourself?
That I am doing the best that I could at that time. I felt like a failure, and anything that wasn't going right was my fault. So I feel like that would have been the most important thing to hear, is that I'm doing the best that I can and that we will get through it.
That's so beautiful. And what is the ultimate goal for your business and working with parents that have kids on the spectrum?
I want to keep just helping families. A big thing for me is communication. I'm really good at helping kids with communication. I think that's because of my son. So even if it's not verbal, that's another thing, is that behaviors are communication. That's a big aspect of ABA, is when a kid is engaging in a behavior, they're communicating something. And some kids may not communicate verbally ever, and that's fine. But we can still provide them with some kind of communication, some kind of language, so that they can navigate the world. A lot of times we see behaviors decrease once we increase that communication, because it would be super annoying if I couldn't say what I wanted
Yeah.
and I couldn't express myself like that. That would cause me to have a tantrum. So I want to keep helping with communication. I want to keep supporting families. Okay.
No.
I want to keep supporting families, um, and providing that comfort, providing them that strength to be there for their kid.
And what's your confession as an autism mom?
Ooh, I have made so many mistakes. I'm gonna keep making mistakes. I'm a mom and I'm human. And unfortunately, there's no like guidebook on parenting neurotypical or neurodiverse children. So, I mean, in the beginning, I was more focused on, I want him to talk, I want him to do this, I want him to do that, and less focused on what he wants and what would make his life better. And that's one of my regrets that I have, is that I was pushing so hard to mold him into something. And as soon as I stopped and I just, it's like, hey, he's happy and he's enjoying life, that's when everything just flooded through. That's when he started talking. That's when he started making friends and not wanting me to help him with stuff. Yeah, so that was my biggest mistake, was just trying to fix him.
I think that was my mistake too. And I recently figured that out. Like, I'm always trying to, like, Aiden, do this, or Aiden, try this. And I had to realize, like, one of the BCBAs at his center, she was like, Aiden is always happy. And I just had to realize, like, let me kind of pull back on my expectations, because they may be a little bit too high. And I don't ever want him to be unhappy. I
Yeah.
don't want me pushing him to force him to be unhappy. So, yeah. And can you let us know where we can find you on all social media platforms, your website, and if anyone need help from you?
Yeah, so my website is spectrumoptimalcareaba.com, and on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, Spectrum Optimal Care LLC.
Right. So you all, I will put that in the description box. It'll be where you can just click on it, and it'll take you directly to her page, YouTube channel, all of that. Please leave a lovely comment below for Miss Tawana, and follow her and enjoy her content. As you can tell, she's an amazing mom, but even a more amazing BCBA. She's very passionate about it. She's just not doing it just because she loves what she does. So anybody that's passionate about working with our babies is a great place to get resources from and to work with. Tawana, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking about your journey and just being so vulnerable and very transparent with us. I greatly appreciate you.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Of course. And you all, that is the end of this week's episode. And I will see you all next week. Bye.